She sent a message saying, "I can't deal with your emotional issues anymore. It's over." After I shared my struggles with anxiety, I answered, "Thanks for revealing your true self." Then I ignored her apology letter 6 months later when she sought my help. I'm a 31-year-old man who dated my ex-girlfriend, 28, for 2 years. We met through friends at a barbecue, clicked right away, and things progressed quickly. Within half a year, we were almost spending every night together. After a year, we were discussing moving in together, browsing apartment online, and creating budgets. I genuinely believed she was the one, the person I'd marry, have kids with, and build a life alongside. Here's my background. I have generalized anxiety disorder. I've been managing it since my early 20s, officially diagnosed at 24 after a particularly tough time, and I've been in therapy on and off since then. I take medication. That helps a lot. I'm functioning well, working as a project manager at a construction firm for 5 years, with a good salary and benefits. I have friends, hobbies, and a fulfilling life. But anxiety is part of me, and I've learned to cope instead of constantly battling it. For most of our relationship, I didn't discuss it in depth. It wasn't that I was hiding it. She knew I took medication daily and had a therapist I saw bi-weekly. However, since it wasn't a major issue in our daily lives, I had my coping strategies in place. When I felt overwhelmed, I would run, call my therapist, or take time to recharge. She never witnessed the tough moments because I managed them before they affected her. Looking back, maybe that gave her a misleading impression of what it's like to date someone with anxiety. About 8 months ago, I had a genuinely rough patch. Work was chaotic. We had 3 major construction projects falling apart due to supply chain issues and contractor problems. My boss was pressuring me about deadlines beyond my control, and I was working at least 60 hours a week. On top of that, my dad had a health scare. He went to the doctor thinking it was heartburn, but they found something on a scan. For 2 weeks, we were uncertain about its seriousness. Fortunately, it turned out to be benign and easily treated. But during those 2 weeks, I feared losing my father. The anxiety surged like it hadn't in years. I struggled to sleep, waking at 3 a.m. with racing thoughts, and my appetite vanished. I was just grappling with difficulties I hadn't faced in a long time. I thought I could confide in my girlfriend. That's what partners do, right? One night, after she noticed I'd been distant, I opened up. I shared the work stress, the situation with my dad, and how my anxiety was spiking. I mentioned having intrusive thoughts about worst-case scenarios, and that I'd scheduled extra therapy sessions to work through it. I wasn't asking her to fix anything or expecting her to be my therapist. I just wanted her to understand my distance wasn't about her. She listened, nodded, and said it sounded really tough. She seemed supportive, hugged me, and stated we'd get through it together. That night, I felt closer to her than I had in weeks. The next morning, I woke up alone. She had already left, which was unusual since she usually waited for me to wake up for coffee. I checked my phone and found a text that I still have saved because I couldn't believe it was real. It read, "I thought about this all night and can't sleep. I realized I can't take on your emotional issues anymore. It's too much for me. We're over. Please respect my decision and don't contact me." I read it multiple times, sitting on the edge of my bed in my boxers, trying to comprehend what was happening. After 2 years, after everything we shared, after all the times I supported her, she ended things over text because I was honest about my struggles. Not because I did something wrong or treated her badly, but simply because I admitted I was having a hard time. I typed out around 15 different responses, long ones detailing how unfair this was, short ones just asking why, angry ones, sad ones. I deleted them all. My hands trembled and my heart raced as I thought, no, I'm not going to beg someone to love me despite my mental health. I won't apologize for being honest. Finally, I sent, "Thank you for showing me who you truly are." Then I blocked her number, her on Instagram, Facebook, everywhere, and sat in my apartment for an hour feeling utterly empty. The following weeks were tough. To be honest, I relied heavily on my therapist, talked to close friends, and worked through it piece by piece. The breakup hurt, But what hurt more was realizing I spent 2 years with someone who viewed my mental health as baggage. Someone who couldn't handle even a single conversation about my struggles. Someone who preferred to leave rather than face anything challenging. But I got through it. I adjusted my medication with my doctor, put in extra work in therapy, and slowly began to feel like myself again. I even moved to a new apartment 3 months later, partly for a fresh start and partly because my old place held too many memories. That was 6 months ago. Last week, I received a handwritten letter in the mail, 4 pages in a cream-colored envelope with her return address. I have no idea how she got my new address since I moved after our breakup, and we have no mutual contacts who would have given it to her. Inside was a long, rambling letter. The main points were that she deeply regretted how she ended things. She'd been going through her own issues and hadn't handled it well. She missed me and thought about me constantly. She realized she made a huge mistake letting me go and wanted me for coffee to talk things through and see if we could reconnect. Then, buried on page 3 like an afterthought, the real reason for the letter emerged. Her lease was ending next month, and she'd been laid off 8 weeks ago, putting her in a tough financial situation. She recalled how I was good with money and planning, and how I helped her set up a budget while we were together. She asked if I could help her get back on her feet while she figured things out. So, essentially, she left me for having anxiety, went completely silent for 6 months, and then reached out when she needed financial help. I sat with that letter for a long time. Part of me wanted to laugh at her audacity. Another part wanted to respond just to tell her what I thought. But mostly I felt exhausted. Tired of her and tired of the whole situation. I didn't reply. I don't plan to. But her letter triggered a series of events I didn't expect. And that's what I need to share. Update 1. 1 week later. I didn't respond to the letter. I tossed it in my desk drawer and tried to move on. I assumed she'd take my silence, as the answer it clearly was. But apparently, silence wasn't acceptable to her. 3 days after her letter arrived, she showed up at my apartment, appearing at my door on a Saturday afternoon as if it were normal. I have a video doorbell, so I saw her standing in the hallway before I even considered opening the door. She rang the bell, waited, rang it again, and then started knocking. I watched from my phone inside, genuinely shocked that she tracked down my new address and just showed up unannounced like she was entitled to my time. She stood there for about 15 minutes, knocking around 20 times. I could hear her saying, "I know you're home. Please talk to me through the door." Eventually, she gave up and left a note under my door saying, "I know you're probably still upset, but can we please talk? I'm parked outside. I'll wait. Come down when you're ready." I didn't go down. I made lunch, watched TV, and pretended she didn't exist. After about an hour and a half, she finally drove away. That night, she emailed me. She must have remembered my personal email from our time together, because I definitely hadn't given it to her recently. This message had a different tone than the handwritten letter, less apologetic and more accusatory. She claimed I was being cruel by ignoring her, that she sincerely apologized, and I was punishing her for a mistake she made 6 months ago. She asserted that my behavior showed I hadn't worked on myself in therapy, because a truly healthy person would have a simple conversation. She expressed disappointment in me. The manipulation was honestly impressive. She tried to use my mental health, the very issue she dumped me for discussing, to guilt me into responding. I didn't reply to that either. I saved the email but didn't give her the satisfaction. Then she pulled out the next tactic. Mutual friends, the couple who introduced us, friends I'd known for 6 years before meeting her, reached out within the same week. The wife texted me first, saying my ex had called her in tears, saying I was ghosting her and didn't understand why I was being so cold. The wife asked if I could at least hear her out since my ex was really struggling and needed support. I thought about how to respond for a while, then sent her the screenshot of the breakup text where my ex called my mental health emotional baggage she couldn't accept. I said, "This is how she ended things after I trusted her enough to share my struggles. I'm not obligated to help someone who treated me like that. I hope you understand." The wife went quiet and didn't respond for several hours. Later that evening, her husband texted me separately, saying he had no idea how things had ended and completely understood why I wasn't interested in reconnecting. I told him, no hard feelings. These things happen. But my ex wasn't finished escalating. A few days later, I received a voicemail from an unknown number. It was her mother. She called to advocate for her daughter. The voicemail lasted about 2.5 minutes and was genuinely unhinged. She stated her daughter had made a mistake. But everyone makes mistakes, and I needed to be the bigger person. She said her daughter was struggling, and that as someone who claims to understand mental health issues, I should have compassion. She accused me of being petty by refusing to talk. She concluded with, "Please call me back so we can discuss this like adults. I know you're better than this." The irony of her using my mental health, the very thing her daughter dumped me for, as a reason to help was not lost on me. I didn't call back. What I did do was finally respond to my ex with short and direct email. I wrote, "I received your letter, emails, and your mother's voicemail. I'm not interested in reconnecting, meeting for coffee, or providing financial help. Please stop contacting me and stop sending others to reach out on your behalf. I wish you well, but I've moved on and I need you to do the same." I thought that would end it. It didn't. Update 2. 2 weeks later. My clear request to stop contacting me was apparently taken as an invitation to escalate further. Within 48 hours of my email, my ex sent a response that was genuinely unhinged. I'm summarizing because it was lengthy, but the highlights included her accusing me of being emotionally abusive throughout our relationship. She claimed I manipulated her into dating me by hiding my mental health issues until she was too invested to leave. I never hid anything. She knew about my medication and therapy from month 2. She said the 2 years spent with me were wasted years and demanded I give her $3,000 to cover her expenses until she found a new job. She asserted, "The least you can do is help me financially after everything you put me through." Everything I put her through by having anxiety that she was aware of. I screenshotted that email and saved it, but didn't respond. At this point, I genuinely started to worry about the escalation. I consulted a friend who is a lawyer. He said I probably didn't have grounds for a restraining order yet since she hadn't made explicit threats, but advised me to document all contacts carefully in case things continue to escalate. 3 days later, she showed up at my workplace. I work at a construction company with a main office in a commercial building. Nothing fancy, but professional. She walked into the lobby on a Wednesday afternoon, told the receptionist she was there to see me about a personal issue, and sat down in the waiting area as if she had an appointment. The receptionist, unaware of who she was, called my extension to let me know I had a visitor. As soon as she said, "There's a woman here to see you," I knew exactly who it was. I instructed the receptionist to tell my ex that I wasn't available and that she needed to leave the building. According to the receptionist, things deteriorated quickly after that. My ex refused to leave, loudly claiming I was avoiding her and that she just needed 5 minutes to discuss something important. When the receptionist stated she'd have to call security if she didn't leave, my ex reportedly started crying in the lobby, saying I ruined her life and she had nowhere else to turn. Security was called, and they escorted her out. I watched from a window as she walked to her car, still crying, and sat there for about 10 minutes before driving away. My boss, who heard the commotion, pulled me aside afterward to ask what was happening. I gave him a brief explanation. Ex-girlfriend from a relationship that ended 6 months ago, persistent contact, and the situation was being handled. He understood, but firmly told me to ensure it stayed off company property. I couldn't blame him for that. That night, I decided to call my ex directly for the first time since the breakup. Part of me hoped a direct conversation would finally make an impact where texts and emails hadn't. She picked up on the first ring, her voice bright and hopeful. "Oh my God, you called. I knew you'd come around." I said, "You need to listen carefully. You showed up at my workplace today. You've sent multiple emails, voicemails via your mother, and appear at my apartment unannounced. This needs to stop." The brightness faded from her voice. She said, "I was just trying to talk to you. You won't respond to anything." I replied, "Because I don't want to talk to you. We broke up 6 months ago." She began to cry, saying, "I know, and I made a mistake. I was scared and didn't handle it right. I regret it every day since." I just need help right now. I lost my job and apartment, and I'm staying on a friend's couch. I genuinely sympathized but told her, that's really tough, but it's not my responsibility to fix. She pleaded, you're the only person I can ask. Everyone else has said no. There it was. I was her last resort after everyone else turned her down. I reminded her, you call my mental health emotional baggage and dumped me over text after I trusted you. That wasn't fear, it was cruelty. You're only reaching out now because you need something from me. She was silent for a moment, then asked, so you're really not going to help me after 2 years together? After everything? I replied, after what exactly? What did you do for me during those 2 years that obligates me to rescue you financially now? She had no answer. I firmly told her, don't contact me again. Don't show up at my job. Don't send your family to call me. I mean it. I hung up before she could respond. 2 days later, I received a Venmo request from her for $3,000 with a memo stating, you know what this is for? I declined and blocked her on Venmo as well. Update 3. 3 weeks later. Final. This is likely my last update because I'm genuinely drained from this whole ordeal and ready to move on. After I blocked her on Venmo, she attempted one last approach. She called my parents. She must have gotten their number from our time together. My mom was saved in my phone, and she probably remembered it or found it on social media. My mom answered the call since she didn't recognize the number. My ex introduced herself as my ex-girlfriend who needed to reach me about an emergency. She explained that I was refusing to help her despite her being in trouble and asked if my mom could talk to me and help me see reason. My mom, a wonderful person who doesn't tolerate nonsense, said, if my son doesn't want to talk to you, I'm sure he has good reasons for that. I won't get involved. Goodbye. When my mom called to inform me, she asked what was really going on. I shared the entire story. The breakup text, the emotional baggage comment, the 6 months of silence, the sudden reappearance when she needed money, all of it. My mom was quiet for a long moment, then said, that poor girl made a terrible choice when she had you, and now she's facing the consequences. But that's not your burden to carry. You did the right thing by protecting yourself. That moment helped me finally release the guilt I'd been holding. A part of me had felt bad about not helping. She was struggling and desperate, and I'm not a monster. I don't enjoy seeing anyone suffer, even those who hurt me. But my mom was right. My ex made a choice. She chose to view my vulnerability as a burden and discard me because of it. The consequences of that choice weren't mine to fix. After talking to my parents, things went quiet. I don't know if she finally got the message, ran out of energy, or moved on to seek assistance from someone else. I stopped hearing from her directly. No more emails, voicemails, or surprise visits. However, about a month later, I heard some news about her through mutual friends. The wife who initially reached out on my ex's behalf texted me unexpectedly, apologizing again for getting involved and mentioning she'd only heard one side of the story at first. Then she shared something interesting. My ex had been burning bridges everywhere. I wasn't the only one she'd asked for money. She had reached out to multiple friends, family, and even co-workers, asking for loans that everyone knew she wouldn't repay. She had gotten into arguments with her parents over financial assistance, and her friend group had distanced themselves due to her frequent and aggressive requests. The mutual friend remarked, I think she's always been like this, but she hit it well when things were good. You just saw it first. I didn't feel victorious hearing that. I felt exhausted and a little sad. Not for the dead relationship I didn't want back, but for the person she seemed to become, or perhaps always was underneath, which I hadn't clearly seen until she showed her true self. Last I heard, she moved back in with her parents out of state. Whether she figures her life out from there is genuinely not my concern anymore. As for me, I'm still doing the work, seeing my therapist, taking my medication, managing my anxiety one day at a time. The difference now is that I'm doing it without shame. My ex tried to make me feel like my mental health was a flaw, something I should hide, something that made me less deserving of love. But that's nonsense. I'm allowed to struggle. I'm allowed to have rough days. And I expect the people in my life to respond with support instead of abandonment. I'm not dating anyone right now and not actively searching. Just taking time to exist, spend time with friends, focus on work, and prioritize myself. When I'm ready, I'll put myself back out there. And when I do, I'll be upfront about who I am from the start, including my anxiety. Not as a test, but because I refuse to hide parts of myself to make someone else comfortable. If they can't handle it, they can leave early. Better to know in the first month than after 2 years. Thanks for reading all this. Take care of yourselves.